planes and hailing cabs, been on the road so long.
Welcome to Bluegrass Brooklyn, our podcast all about the music we love, straight from the bluegrass borough of Brooklyn, New York.
Uptown, round and down. There must be some just hiding out somewhere, someplace I ain't found. Annie, Orphan Annie, are your Nashville nights still warm? Somewhere near the west of town.
Hello and welcome to this episode of Bluegrass Brooklyn. My name is Liz Wolfe.
And I'm Mike Wilner.
And we're very excited about our guests that we have on today's episode because they are prominent members of our Brooklyn bluegrass scene. And first up, we have bassist Nate Sabat. He is a great bass player that's been all over the country these days and will be telling us about that. And of course, we also have another homegrown, locally known band called Down North Bluegrass. And they are Brooklyn based, and you're going to hear from them as well.
Very exciting.
So I want to make sure everybody knows about Nate's show that's coming up on December 14th. You have an opportunity to go see his incredible bass playing live locally here in Brooklyn at the Owl Music Parlor on December 14th, and he will be playing with Eliza Eden. So do not miss that show. It's local. It's going to be an awesome show. So what do you have going on, Mike?
Well, I'm looking forward to the Flatfoot Flatbush event on December 21st here in Brooklyn, kicking off on Flatbush Avenue, right at the corner of Carlton. They will be flat-footing their way down Flatbush Avenue with fiddles and guitars and whatever else people can tote, and then there'll be a party afterwards. It's presented by Porch Stomp and Make Music NYC that put on the annual Porch Stomp Festival on Governor's Island, so gonna be a good time. Check the program notes for a link to more information. And by the way, the intro music for this episode was Orphan Annie by Nate Sabat from his Bass Fiddler album.
A really interesting, innovative LP that he has recently put out.
Yeah, you don't get much solo bass and vocal music. It's quite interesting. Please remember to follow us at Bluegrass Brooklyn. Brooklyn is spelled BKLYN. You can visit us at bluegrassbrooklyn.com. You can find us on Facebook in our Bluegrass Brooklyn group. And if you're looking for jams around Uptown Manhattan, the Bronx, Riverdale, and New Jersey, and who knows where else, check out bluegrassjamsnearme.com.
Soon to have a new website being launched, by the way.
Very cool.
Very exciting.
Okay, so Liz, anything else?
Not right now. Let's get to the interviews.
Absolutely. Let's roll.
So hello and welcome, everyone. Today on the show, we have Nate Sabat. Nate is a bass player of great fame here in Brooklyn and way beyond. So Nate, I know you have a lot going on and we're going to talk about all that stuff. But yeah, why don't you give us the quick rundown on all your projects that you've got going on right now?
Absolutely. Hey, everyone. Nice to virtually meet you all. You can find me at natesabat.com. In addition to having a solo album of just bass and voice called Bass Fiddler, which you just heard a track off of, I also, obviously, as a bass player, am doing a lot of freelance work and am very involved in the bluegrass scene writ large. This year, I've been working with Trey Wellington and the Foreignlanders. That's David Benedict and his wife, Tabitha. For those of you who know Mandolin Mondays, he's the guy behind that. And actually just got off the road with Missy Rain's guitar player, Ben Garnett. He released a beautiful instrumental record in early October. So really had an amazing year, and I'm looking forward to doing more here in town and more on the national scale. So broad brush, that's kind of what I'm up to on the performing side of things. And teach privately, Zoom, online, in person as well here in New York. I have a Patreon page for bass instruction, and I have a Mel Bay book for those of you who are more just getting started playing bass. So that's essentially everything I do. That's my pitch.
Well, here's the thing about bass players. You always need one, but you don't need more than one.
So true.
So I am somewhat in awe of how you can be in demand in so many places as such a skilled bass player, and the work that you've done to become someone that people can really rely on to be their bass player. From a bass player perspective, what are your thoughts on the part where you really always need a bass player, but you only ever need one?
Yeah, no, it's a great point. It's a great responsibility to be a bass player, especially in a style of music that so often doesn't really have percussion instruments. Playing in a string band setting, it's often described that like the string band or the bluegrass band is like a drum kit, and each instrument plays a rhythmic role in the band. And obviously you would maybe liken the bass to like a kick drum. So it's really important that, we're right on the beat, and also harmonically, we know where we are in our form, and also we know what the chord is, what's coming next. So I think the thing that I always stress to students and when I'm learning new music is form is the most important part of what we do. We have to understand our verse, our chorus, bridge, instrumental interludes, and how it all ties together. You need to have that big picture analysis of what's happening musically. And then you can start to dig more into the details of like, oh yeah, what's that specific chord, or what's the specific groove I'm playing on in this section. But without form, you're going to be totally lost. So I'd say that's one thing that's definitely helped me grow as a bass player and a musician, is just to make sure I'm thinking more broadly than just what chord am I playing.
I'm a somewhat newish novice bass player myself. I don't own an upright bass, which I've mentioned many times on this podcast. That is a new discovery to me from going to some of these camps that I've been to, and they always have like, you should play the bass. Oh, I should. So that's a lot of fun. And one thing that I love about the bass for myself is that I can just do that 1-5, 1-5, 1-5, and I could do that, and people will say, wow, you're really doing pretty well on that bass. And I'm like, okay, well, that's all I'm doing is 1 and 5, and hopefully keeping pretty good time. Is that adequate? And where do I go from there?
I would say that, yeah, like the fundamental way to play bluegrass bass, and this is my opinion, but I think also a lot of people agree with it, is actually it's 1s and 5s, right? Your root of your chord and the 5 of that chord. And then the note before you change to your next chord, repeat that 1. So let's say you have 4 beats of 1, 1, 5, 1, 1, 4 chord, 1, 5, 1, 1, back to 1, 1, 5, 1, 1. And I'm saying like 1 as the root of the chord, and then
Right.
5 as the 5th of that chord. So it's really nice to have a transition note in there. If you're not a bass player, bring it to any bass player you play in, jam with, or a band with. It's really great to have a different note when you're moving from chord to chord. So speaking it, let's say you're in the key of A, E, A, D, A, D, D, A, E, A, and then 5 chord, E, B, E, E, back to A. That's the way I would describe it. And then, from there, you can start getting into other ways to transition from chord to chord. So using your scale notes or a chromatic run or a little rhythmic fill. So the best way to think about developing a bluegrass bass line is how do you transition from chord to chord? That's where a lot of your color and your style is going to come out. When you're just vamping on a chord, 1s and 5s will do the trick. So that's what I'd say about that.
Yeah. So, that's one thing about the bass from my perspective, is that it's accessible, because even if I didn't know what you just said, I could just do that 1-5, 1-5 thing. And
Yeah.
I could hold it down and this has happened to me where I've gone to an occasional jam where there are no other bass players there who are designated as a bass player. And I say, okay, I could just do that much, which is totally fun. And then I watch real bass players playing, like yourself, or even some of the really great local people that we have at the jams that show up. So then wow, look at all that movement on that bass fretless thing, up and down, and sounds so great, and taking breaks on fiddle tunes and all that. So it's both very inviting and very daunting.
Yeah, I would say that the bass is a pretty steep learning curve. That's the way I would describe it. The barrier to entry, like you said, is like really low, and it's so welcoming. I think the more challenging thing when you're a beginner is the stamina than it is the actual theory or the approach to playing. Just being able to get into a jam and play for half an hour or an hour without your hand cramping up or getting tired, that takes, that basic technique, understanding how to play in a healthy way, and then also just building that stamina over time. But that's kind of the first hurdle, I would say, is just getting used to the instrument physically. But yeah, then as far as the musical side of things, it does get a lot more challenging when you start to think about, yeah, how am I going to make this bass line more colorful? How am I going to actually, start to play melodies on the bass or take a solo, get into thumb position, play with the bow, etc. So yeah, I really like that people can get in and start playing. And then if you really want to take it to the next level, you can really get serious about it and just improve pretty dramatically, pretty quickly, I would say.
So what sparked your initial interest in playing the bass?
Well, I really liken it back to when I was growing up. I grew up on the Upper West Side of Manhattan and sang in a choir called the Young People's Chorus of New York City. So I really got into music through choral singing, which is luckily also a kind of a big component of the bluegrass, right? With our trio harmony singing and duet singing and everything. So I got into it through choral singing. And as my voice started dropping, I was like 12 or 13, I moved from like the highest tenor part in the men's choir down to not fully the lowest part, but I was singing some bass parts, when we got together with the girls, and then started, listening to the bass on some albums that I really loved. At the time, it was more electric bass. I take after my dad's music taste. So it was like Beatles, Fountains of Wayne, XTC. If anyone knows XTC, they're a great like British studio art rock band. So those three bands, I really started listening to the bass part because I was singing in that register in choir. And then just one day I asked my dad, I was like, hey, can we get your electric bass out of the basement? I think I want to start learning how to play. And yeah, luckily my dad was also a bass player when he was growing up. Yeah, in Jersey. So he had his bass and we had a small amp. I just kind of went off to the races with learning different bass lines on pop and rock songs. It wasn't until I was like 15 that I picked up the upright. And first got really into jazz. Like growing up in New York, obviously that was kind of the music that was most common on upright bass. But when I got to Berklee College of Music in Boston, I just really fell in love with the Roots music program and all the acoustic music that was going on in Boston. Like you said, there's a shortage of bass players in the scene. Yeah. You could say. So kind of at all levels and in all settings, there's always a need for us. So as a bass player, it was easy enough for me to kind of get involved with other acoustic musicians in Boston and really start playing the music, some original songs, some fiddle tunes, and just playing with a bunch of different bands, a bunch of different types of gigs. So from there, the rest is kind of history.
I've never heard that of going from singing bass to playing bass. That's the first for me.
But I love singing baritone harmony, and it's kind of always been my sweet spot. There really hasn't been a baritone part that I don't think has felt comfortable in my voice. And I sing lead, obviously, too. But something about singing harmony for me is really, really special. So I think the thing about bluegrass in particular that's just so exciting for me is I can continue to sing and sing really intricate parts, but also I can play upright bass and progress on the instrument. And I'm also a singer-songwriter, so I get to contribute my writing to whatever band I'm a part of, or on my solo album, about half of it is original music. So for me, it's like all of the boxes are checked musically when it comes to bluegrass. Yeah, it's become my home for sure.
Speaking of your solo album called Bass Fiddler, which came out this past spring. And
April 2024. Yeah.
So it's just you and you singing and playing.
It's me and me, totally. Yeah, I had this vision for making a completely solo album in the pandemic. So I took some songs I really loved and some original songs of mine and reimagined them for this setting of just upright bass and voice. And I was really, really grateful and lucky to have Bruce Milsky produce the album. Bruce is a little bit more in the old time world, but I'm sure if you live in New York and you're into bluegrass, you probably know Bruce at this point. But he's just a really amazing singer and fiddle player, and also plays guitar and banjo. He's just really, really good at arranging music for solo performance. So having him produce it was like a dream come true. He really understood the setting and he understood what I was trying to go for. I'm obviously not much of an old time musician, but the music really spans from folk music, bluegrass, original songwriting, kind of like a rock or jazz influence in there. So all of the things that I am into musically are definitely displayed on Bass Fiddler.
That is the first time that I've heard about someone producing a solo album with just themselves and the bass. What challenges were you facing as a result of having that model of recordings?
Totally. It's a great question. I think one of the really challenging things that I think Bruce would probably mention too is you're dealing with two instruments that you have to intonate at all times, right? You have to keep both instruments in tune with one another. And if you're interested in keeping them in a traditional A440 tuning, you also have to think about that. So that's a real challenge, right? You're not playing a fretted instrument that's going to keep you in tune vocally. So learning how to navigate that was really interesting and definitely took a lot of practice and prep work up front. And then the other thing is maybe more of an arrangement challenge, which was how to just fill the space in a way that felt compelling. Not every section of every song feels like completely full, but also I think that's part of what makes the album intriguing. You know, I kind of leave room for the listener to fill in the gaps. For example, I have an original song on there called Fade Away. And in my mind, I always picture like a pretty heavy drum beat when the bass line comes in. And I was trying to kind of feel that internally when I was recording. But that doesn't necessarily mean someone else would hear that drum beat. They might hear a guitar part or keys or something. It just makes for a little bit more imagination from the listener. So I kind of liken it to reading a book. You're reading a book, it's just words on a page, but you're kind of creating a scene in your head. So instead of here's everything that you'd expect, here's the full bluegrass band, or here's a full rock band, or whatever, here's this really intimate setting that you can fill in the gaps yourself, you know, instead. So I kind of had to use it as an advantage in the end, like the space. I had to think about what's different about, you know, this musical space than your average bluegrass record.
And are there other records that are bass and singing only that I should be aware of?
There are definitely some musicians who do it really well. Scott Mulvihill comes to mind. Scott is a great, bassist, singer, songwriter who lives in Nashville. And he recorded some solo bass and voice songs. I can't remember what album of his it's on, but if you check him out online, you'll definitely find some solo bass and voice stuff of his. It leans a little bit more pop, and he's also really, really good at using the bass as a percussion instrument. So he'll like use the bass, the wooden part of the bass as an instrument as well. So he'll like play a bass note and then get a groove going, which is really impressive. So he definitely was part of the reason I started to think about doing something like this. Mm-hmm. Another person to check out is Jordan Morton. I think she goes by Jordan Sand, actually, as a stage name. And she does a lot more like new music stuff with bass and voice. So she's, you know, coming from, a little bit more of a conservatory model, some atonal stuff, some textural things that, you know, you wouldn't necessarily hear in a folk music setting. So yeah, Jordan and Scott are both people I recommend checking out if you're interested in learning more about what's going on in the world of bass and voice.
So what are some other projects that you're working on right now as you move forward?
Well, first on the topic of the solo bass and voice project, I am planning on recording a short EP early next year. I'm thinking of it kind of like a follow-up to Bass Fiddler. It'll be all cover material, definitely some songs you will have heard of if you are, you know, in the bluegrass folk scene. So stay tuned for that at some point next year. But then otherwise, I'm in the freelance side of things. I've been really lucky to get to work with Trey Wellington a bunch this year. Trey's a really great banjo player and a composer, and his band's all over the place. Trey has been great to work with, and David Benedict and Tabitha Benedict, the Foreign Landers, is their project, and got to showcase with them at IBMA this year in Chattanooga. It was really fun to play with David and Tabitha, and we'll probably be doing some more playing next year. In December, I'll be playing with a great singer-songwriter called Eliza Edens over at the Owl Music Parlor, which is in Prospect Lefferts Gardens. So another Brooklyn show. And it's a little bit more outside of the bluegrass realm, but very much within the folk and original song scene here in New York. So that's on December 14th, which is a Sunday. So hope to see y'all there, one or the other. That's what I have going on in town for the rest of the year.
So there you were in Boston, and you said, let me go back to Brooklyn, or let me come back to New York and start playing in Brooklyn again. What drew you back here?
Went to Berklee for 3 years, was able to graduate in 3 years, which was great for various reasons. But I was in Boston from like 2012 to 2019. And I think at a certain point I was playing with my band Mile 12. Those of you who were around before the pandemic may remember us. We were very much like a Northeastern bluegrass band, string band. And we were at a point where it felt like we could move to different cities. There comes a time in a band where it's established enough to where you can kind of live your own life when you're off the road. You don't have to be in the same place necessarily. So we were at that point in Mile 12 where Bronwyn Keith Hines had moved to Nashville. David Benedict actually was living over in Ireland with Tabitha, his now wife, who I mentioned earlier. So it felt like, okay, we got someone in Ireland, we have someone in Nashville. I think I could probably move back to New York. It wouldn't be that big of a deal. And then the pandemic hit. This is a little bit over half a year after I moved back to New York. The pandemic hit and kind of just upended everything. But the reason I wanted to come back to New York musically was just the open-endedness of the city. I just love how New York is really about like art and making valuable art. And it doesn't necessarily sell like, some flashy music out there does, but it's about making really interesting and creative and unique work. So that was really what I was interested in pursuing, and certainly have done that with Bass Fiddler. Like it's not the kind of record that's getting thousands of spins online, but I don't really care. That's a secondary motive for me. It's like, just want to make an impact in the scene and do something unique for myself. So yeah, that record is very much a direct result of like moving back to New York and being a part of the music scene here. Yeah, it's just a really special place, as we all know, especially if anyone out there grew up here. It's like, it's in our blood, so it's hard to leave.
Yeah, you want to come back for sure.
Totally. Yeah. It's been it's almost been 7 years back here now. It's kind of hard to believe, but it's been great.
Yeah, and creating something because for the creative purpose of it is really a wonderful thing. You have something in your head. As you know, I'm focused much more on the jamming scene than the performance and making albums and all that kind of stuff. But every once in a while I think, yeah, gosh, I really would love to just get in a recording studio and record and get some cool people in there to record with, because I think that's a way of capturing something that would have no other way to be captured, and that's alone a value in the world. Taking it worth that. I think it's worth putting your creative contribution into the music world.
Totally. Yeah. It almost feels like it's hard not to do it. It would be hard for me to not have made this album and want to record this next solo EP. Just like you have an idea for something and it's like, I have to make this happen, at some point. And that's a really cool feeling. I've always existed on that side of the music industry a little bit more, like the artistic output, the meaning behind what I'm doing. But, I think everyone who's involved in the music world has a purpose. Some people are more of the industry driven musicians who are trying to gain a lot of fans, as many as they can, have a really marketable product. And that's really useful as well. So we all kind of have to exist in this ecosystem together. A big part of it is just knowing who you are, and being okay with who you are, not trying to force anything. So it's been a journey of sorts. But yeah, back to your point of recording, I think it is really great just to have a snapshot of what you're doing. I'm a huge fan of that idea. It's not like the recording isn't necessarily a final product. It's just a snapshot in time. The music on your album could potentially be stronger, years after releasing it because you play it so often and you're so used to it. But it doesn't necessarily mean the album doesn't have any worth, just because it's not necessarily the best version of what you did. Sometimes it is the best version of what you did. It just kind of depends.
Yeah.
But yeah, I would definitely recommend get your jam group in a studio and record some stuff.
Yeah.
It would be fun. That's such a big part of this community too, is just getting together and playing more casually. So that's another reason I love it so much. It's just like community, but there's also artistry and there's industry, and everything kind of exists within bluegrass in a way that is awesome.
Yes, absolutely. Well, thank you so much for having this conversation with me. And just to remind everybody, you can find Nate online, all of his ventures at natesabat.com, but that's spelled Sabat, natesabat.com. All of the good work that you're doing, and hoping to get out to see you in some of your gigs and listen to your albums. And just love having you be a Brooklyn homegrown, locally known, yet somebody who's really making an impact in the bluegrass world. So really, thank you for coming on the show.
Thank you so much, Liz.
Well, hello and welcome. And right now I have three young, enthusiastic bluegrass musicians who are in the Down North Bluegrass Band. And we've got Landon Trust, Sam Chester, and Tom Gauze on here with me. And that was the hardest part of this interview, making sure I introduced everybody correctly. So welcome to the show. And Landon, who I've played with around in some nice fun jams in different places, most recently Lucinda's, wanted to come on to let us know about a new single that they have out. So let's just start with that.
Yeah, so we got into our buddy's studio, Conveyor Studios in Bushwick. And we did that in April. And we've been putting together the music all summer. And we have I Wish I Was a Mole in the Ground as our first single, a real old tune that we sped up and played real hard and put a real aggressive flat third in there and just kind of crowbarred it in. And now it's our first single, which we're really quite excited about. We've never released any music as a band yet, so this is the very, very first release of anything.
Well, the words sped up definitely ring true for me, because I literally thought that you sped it up. Like, that's how fast you guys are playing that. So
We're real excited.
yeah, you were very enthusiastic as you were recording that, for sure. So what do you think was the instrument that was most driving for you in that recording?
I think it was 100%. That's a banjo song.
Yeah.
It's a banjo song.
So you really had to practice
yeah.
for that one, Sam. Tell us about that.
I did, yeah. It was definitely when Landon taught us the tune, and when he first played it, I was like, oh, yep, there's gonna be a lot of banjo here. There's gonna be a lot of rolls, there's gonna be a lot of volume. I knew exactly which hard driving banjo I wanted to use on it, and it was a lot of fun. It's like exactly the kind of bluegrass I love. I think we all love playing, and so we just got stoked on it. And yeah, I was lucky. But, it wasn't just the banjo. These guys were mashing pretty hard, as they say, and playing some hot licks. So I think we all brought the energy for this particular song.
Yeah, I think I heard some good fiddle on there too from Tom.
Yeah, I had a ton of fun playing, but I think the magic of the track is really a lot of our rhythm section from the guys we brought in to play with us on this EP. Our friend David Chernak, amazing player of every bluegrass instrument, minus the banjo. And Eric Alvar on bass, who has been really a huge mentor to us, from the beginning, from when we met. And so David Chernak and Eric came in and really held it down. And it almost like we got to add our own flavor on top of it. And we're excited for the rest of the EP to come out, so you can hear sort of more of what they're doing there.
Sam, I understand you're actually out in New Jersey, so you got to commute to the bluegrass office.
Yeah, exactly. I commute a long way. It's just me and all the finance guys on the path at night, although I'm doing the reverse commute. But it's totally worth it to play with these guys. And there's some pickers over in New Jersey, so I'm trying to explore that scene and progress to other states.
Well, I know all about that because I put together Jam Jersey, which you may or may not have heard about yet.
I have. I know. I need to check that out.
Yeah, March 20 through 22, 2026. And we had a blast last year, had 150 people come out. I expect more to come this year. So I've actually started to make a connection with some bluegrassers out in New Jersey, for sure. So how long have you been playing together as a band?
It's been a year and change, maybe closer to a year and a half now, I think. At least, is that correct, y'all? You think? It's been we met maybe, into the winter to spring of a year before last at Mona's, and then at Jalopy that was, I think, the last jam. It was I think a jam hosted by Michael Daves at Jalopy. And we were all playing separately from each other, but we were like, oh, I like that guy's playing. And so we exchanged information afterwards and started just jamming casually after that. But then I think I had several individual bar residencies for like singer-songwriter stuff that I was getting tired of playing by myself, feeling very lonely, wanting to play more bluegrass. And so I invited them on to play Prospect Bar and Grill monthly.
Mm-hmm.
And then we started playing Saturn Road every other Thursday. Playing around a lot. Just mostly came out of this jamming and playing bar gigs.
Would we be able to see you playing out now?
Yeah, we still do those residencies once a month, the third Thursday of every month at Prospect Bar and Grill, and then every other Thursday at Saturn Road, which does inevitably lead to the occasional conflict, but we try to organize it as clearly as possible.
It's interesting as bluegrassers and bluegrass players and bands, etc., how, especially in the jamming scene, you end up with, well, I can't do anything Tuesday nights because that's the first Tuesday is Sheriff Bob, and then we got Lucinda's, and then now we've got Michaela Uptown, and now we got Prospect Bar and Grill over for Thursday. We have a lot of nights filled with bluegrass here in the New York City and Brooklyn area. Our lives do revolve around that.
Things really started out for us, and for Sam and I know in particular, who Sam and I had met in college, and we played together in a band in college. The name I will not mention. It's slightly embarrassing. It's maybe a reference to Billy Strings. We graduated from college 3 or 4 years ago, and we're in a couple bands in New York, notably the Banjo Babies, which thankfully that name was retired, but that was with some Mona's regulars. And for me in the scene, it was always really like going to these jams and having so much fun, but wanting to play more of my own projects and wanting to play more in small ensembles and like really focus on building a relationship with the other musicians. So this is, I think, the first year of playing for me where we've had gigs on nights that I would normally go to, say, Mona's. Or there's this amazing old time jam at Grimm's Old Town Brewery that I used to go to all the time. And I live right nearby, and I haven't been able to go in a long time because we have these Thursday gigs. And to me, that's really exciting. And I'm sad to miss out on these community events, but we've just been playing more and more together and having these residencies that are really fun. And we try to make our bar gigs feel really fun and really relaxed and really casual. And we'll come on with maybe a set list for the first set, but kind of just wing it for the second one. And I'm really, really happy with where we've come and where we're going together as a band, and especially putting this single out. You would have looked at us a year ago and it would have been hard to see like us putting out music together. But life's getting really busy, and we want to play really fun gigs, and we want to play gigs where we have more people on stage with us.
The three of you as core players, which is Landon on the guitar and singing. We've got Sam on the banjo and you, Tom, on the fiddle. No resident bass player as of right now. Is that something you would want to bring in, or do you enjoy just bringing other bass players in?
Well, we certainly enjoy playing with the bass. It's something we would prefer to do all the time if possible. I think it's the reality of gigs, regular gigs, especially in the city. It's like talk to musicians from the 80s, and they're like, yeah, that's the same exact rate that bar paid in 1982. And like, like how are you going to split $100 4 ways all the time? I think we all have other jobs, which is a kind of a upsetting reality of music, that is it's very, very, very difficult to do it by itself. But we try to not lose money on the gigs, and then we try to not hire people in the community for disrespectful rates. So yeah, it's an economical reality of the duo, because sometimes one of us is busy. We play a lot of times as a duo with just me and one of either Tom or Sam.
That's known to our fans, by the way, as Diet North. So you can keep an eye out for any subset of the three of us as Diet North.
Diet North?
Diet North, yes. Or North Light, depending on your preferences.
Well, you guys, it has been a lot of fun chatting with you. Love to see you back at the Shrine, because that's close to me, but at any point, go to see you. Down Home Bluegrass. So you have a website? Do you have a website?
Down North Bluegrass.
Wow, oh my God. Oh, that's hilarious. All
Maybe we
right.
should rebrand to Down Home. It's
Maybe you should.
catching.
It's getting some traction.
Keep the take. Keep the take. We're gonna work on the website.
Do you have a website?
We do have a website. The domain, I think it's just downnorthbluegrass.com. Is that correct, Tom?
Yes, it's Down North Bluegrass at everything. It's .com at gmail.com for outreach, or if you want to just chat over email with us. Down North Bluegrass on Instagram, on Facebook as well. You can find our streaming Down North Bluegrass separate words on all streaming platforms except Roblox Music, the one that we decided not to release to. But
Okay.
we'll be on Spotify, Apple Music, all the rest of them.
Well, I definitely recommend both taking a listen to their new single out, looking for that EP that's going to be out in the spring of 2026, and downnorthbluegrass.com, and come out and listen to these really great musicians play some good bluegrass.
Thanks so
Thanks
much,
so much
Liz.
for having us.
Wow, what a great bunch of interviews. Brooklyn really is the bluegrass borough. I loved you and Nate geeking out on bass stuff and the 1-5, 1-4 stuff.
I know.
Really
I thought my
fun.
sister's going to listen to this and have no idea what I was talking about. And by the way, have you noticed a theme that I seem to have, which is I interview a lot of bass players.
No comment. The guys from Down North were such a pleasure to have them. I congratulate them on their upcoming EP release.
Yeah, that Mole song is incredible bluegrass playing. So we're so fortunate to have them here in our city where we can go and see them anytime we want.
Yeah, we're going to take the show out with their song, I Wish I Was a Mole in the Ground. This way everybody could get to hear it.
Okay, please remember to follow us, to like, subscribe, and share our podcast with friends, both near and far.
Absolutely. And if you have any comments for us, someone you'd like to see on the show or some topic you'd like covered, reach us at mike@bluegrassbrooklyn.com.
All right, well, thank you so much for listening.
Yep, we look forward to seeing you around the jam circle.